I was like, wow, Mr. Burns is in the group of people at the start line. And then I was like, oh my gosh, my wedding. Oh my gosh, the birth of each of my kids. I was like that same feeling. And I was like,
Yes.
wait, I started looking back through all the pictures and I was like, metaphorically, like, Mr. Burns is at all the great parties. Like
Yes.
Mr. Burns is always there when good things happen.
Welcome to Beyond the IMO, where financial industry leaders will challenge your perspective and offer strategies to help you thrive in your independence. Here's your host, Justin Woodbury.
Welcome back to Beyond the IMO. Thanks for joining me. This is a different episode today because we're not talking about marketing or sales or challenging traditional thinking. We're actually talking about fear. And the reason why is because I think we've all been faced with a choice that either takes us out of our comfort zone, forces change, terrifies us. And so often, at least I was brought up being taught to overcome fear, to beat fear, to be this macho person that's not afraid of anything. I met my guest, Carl Richards, in 2022, right when I was in the middle of one of those choices that absolutely scared me to death. And it had to do with my career. And I had two directions. I felt like I had come to a fork in the road. I had two directions to go. One direction was stay where I was, be comfortable, be paid well to build somebody else's dream, and compromise my values. The other direction was to walk away with no guaranteed income, support a family and a son with special needs with growing expenses, but have an opportunity to build my own dream and embrace my own values. One of those directions bothered me, bothered my conscience. The other one terrified me. And there are two things that happened during that time. One was I had started a podcast talking to advisors, very similar to the Beyond the IMO. And I would always ask them, how did you get started in the business? And I found a common trend, whether they were older or younger than me, whether I thought they were in a better situation when they started off or a worse situation, whether they had the business handed to them or they had to start from scratch. Every single one of them talked about this fear of going out on their own and starting their own business. And then they talked about how they overcame it, how they beat it. And so I tried for months as I was talking to these guys, talking to these advisors who had been in the similar situation. I tried to overcome that fear that they talked about overcoming. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't overcome fear. So around that same time, I was at an event and I heard Carl Richards get up and talk about his own similar journey of working for the New York Times. He was the sketch guy and he was submitting sketches to the New York Times, and he talked about his own experience of facing imposter syndrome, which is how fear manifested itself to Carl. And he talked very specifically about that feeling. And so I'm sitting in the audience completely relating to him because that's what I was feeling at the time. But instead of kicking fear in the teeth, which is I think the exact words he used, he actually told a story and then related it to his situation. And instead of fighting fear, he embraced it and he invited it in for a cup of coffee. That will make more sense in the episode, but he embraced fear. And he said, when you get that feeling of fear, imposter syndrome, whatever it is, most of the time something good is about to happen. So instead of trying to beat it, embrace it and don't run from it. And that session had such a tremendous impact on me. I remember calling Emily right after that and saying, I've made the final decision. It's time for me to move on. It took several years after that, but I made that decision and have never once looked back. It's been the best decision I've ever made. And so I invited Carl on the podcast to talk about a few other things, but specifically about fear, because I have found it to be so true. Even though I read it in books leading up to this, I've read it in books since then. I have found it to be so true that over the past few years that really there's only one difference between employees who want to own their own business but never do, and employers who do own their own business. And the difference is this: one embraces fear, the other one submits to it. And I used to think so many things about people who own their own business. They must be smarter than other people, or they must be better with their money. They must have massive amounts of startup capital, that entrepreneurs are born, not made. And I have found that none of these are necessarily true. Sometimes they are, but they're not always true. And so I just want this to be an encouragement to the listener. As you're going through this episode, I'm hoping it'll encourage you or challenge you that if you're in a similar situation and you're waiting for the fear to go away, for you to be able to do the right thing, to do what you know you need to do, it will never happen. So stop waiting, stop fearing fear, and instead embrace it. You're listening to Beyond the IMO, and here's my conversation with Carl Richards. I want to start off with this. You might not remember this, but back in 2022, you were a guest speaker at the Jolt conference. I'm sure you remember that part.
Yeah.
But you were on a different podcast that I started, and I never had a chance to tell you this, but you were speaking at the Jolt conference, and I don't remember a lot of what you talked about, because the only thing I can remember is you talked about the Mr. Burns and the imposter syndrome. Yeah. And then you talked about, is it Mara, the goddess Mara?
Yeah, Mara,
and fear and stuff. Yeah. So you're sitting there talking about it, and obviously you had no idea what I was going through at the time, but at the time I was really struggling. I had been with an IMO for almost 15 years, and I was really struggling with leaving them. And I was scared to death to leave, because it meant going out on my own. It meant walking away from people I loved, and I was scared to death. So you're up there talking about Mara, and at one point, the only way I can describe what happened next was like an altar call, because I grew up in a Baptist church. And so you said, I don't know who's out there, who's listening, who needs to hear this, but you're afraid to do something and you just need to do it. So it was like this invitation without the sappy music and stuff, right? And, the lights were turned off, but I'm sitting there like bawling in my seat, thinking, I need to do this. And so I wound up, as soon as it was over, I went out, cleaned myself up, and called my wife and says, I have to leave.
Wow.
And that was in 2022. And almost 2 years later, I did. But I never forgot that talk. In fact, I I bookmarked the Jolt conference and watched that episode over and over again.
Wow.
And it made such an impact. So thank you. And I know you've talked about the imposter syndrome a lot on other podcasts, but I would just love to have you revisit that story of the goddess Mara, and how, well, I don't want to slaughter it, but kicking fear in the teeth or inviting it in and stuff, because it's so powerful, and I believe it could help so many people listening.
Yeah. Well, Justin, first of all, thank you. And that, I love hearing those, right? I'm just a kid from the hills in Utah, wondering if the work ever does any good, and it's meaningful to hear stories like that, because it's the only reason I do the work. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you give me, well, I don't know where Mr. Burns is. Somebody sent me a bobblehead of Mr. Burns that I typically keep on the desk, but I think I put it in the closet. So let me tell you the story for your listeners. So if you can imagine, I bet most people listening can't imagine, there often comes this moment where you sort of walk into a boardroom or a client meeting, and you kind of sit down and you look around for who the adult is, and you realize everybody's looking at you, and you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Well, my moment like that was sitting in the literally like the mountains of Utah, writing a column for a newspaper that a few people read. I had no journalism background. I had no writing background. And the New York Times asked me to write this column. And on top of that, they asked me to draw, they didn't know what to call them, really. They just said, one of those things you draw. We ended up calling them sketches. So they asked me to draw a sketch and then write a column with it. And I said yes, because I knew that would be the right answer. And I intentionally remember thinking right after I said yes, like, whoa, I don't know what does that mean? Like, what do you mean? And so that went on for 10 years every week. And most of those 10 years, but certainly the first 5, every week I would go in, and I remember exactly where my office was. I'm in a new office now, but this office had windows that looked out literally at the mountains. So you felt like you were in the middle of nowhere. I had a Fujitsu snap scanner. These details are important. I didn't even have a flatbed snap scanner, right? Like I had the cheapest scanner you could buy. I had a stack of cardstock I bought from Staples, and I had a box of Sharpies, and I would typically I'd write the column, and it was based on like maybe a question I had received from a reader or a friend or a client. And I'd try to answer that question. It could be about whatever we're talking about today, tariffs, or why NVIDIA is 35% of the S&P or whatever. Like,
sure, yeah.
I write an answer to that, and then I would try to illustrate it. And in the illustration process, it's cardstock and Sharpie. Often, like I'd be done and there'd be a stack of cardstock over. I would just throw the one. I was like, nah, and I'd throw the one. if I didn't get the circle right, or if I messed up something there, I'd throw it over. Finally, I'd get it done, and I'd go to put it in this Fujitsu Snap Scanner to send to the editor at the New York Times. I got the text all written up in a Google Doc, and I got the thing, and I'm scanning it through the Snap Scanner. It makes the noise, and then I go to attach the email, and right about when I'd go to hit send, and this was almost every week, I'd feel this like almost presence. I still get emotional about it over my left shoulder. Towards the door. And it just so happens the window in this office is on my left shoulder too. But this door was frosted glass. So you could make out if there was a person there, but you wouldn't know anything about, you wouldn't even male, female, how tall, like you just see the shadow, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember I would have this feeling of like, that's the person that's going to find out that this is all just, is this the hills of Utah? Is that and what would happen is the door would open in my mind. The door would open and this person would come through, just stick their head in, and they would point at the Fujitsu Snap Scanner and the cardstock on the floor and the Sharpie and just be like, is that a do they know? Like, all right, is this really, and they'd point out the window, like, is this really the hills of Utah? Like, do they know like that, and then wait till they find out. And then there was another version of it that played out in my mind sometimes is they came all the way in and there was a giant switch like on the Roadrunner, like a giant circuit breaker. And the circuit breaker was labeled Carl's career and it was in the on position and they would just look at me and laugh and switch it to the off. And I a long time went by where that would happen and I would just be like, oh, and I would hit send anyway. And I would expect a note back. Most times I would expect a note back that would say like, hey, this has been nice, but that's the end of the sketch guy column. And it just kept happening. And then that person, by the way, in my mind was Mr. Burns, Homer Simpson's boss. And then I was at a speaking engagement. I was in the green room at like one of my first big, like, getting paid like an amount I couldn't believe to give a talk. And there was, like it was one of my like 1,200 people or something. Like it was a big number. It was kind of stadium seating. And I walked out for the rehearsal. And I remember walking out and feeling just this like, there's no way. Like, what am I doing here? And I turning around and walking off on the rehearsal, just being like, I'll come back in a few minutes. But I noticed the same feeling over my left shoulder. And I was like, I started looking around. I was like, where's Mr. Burns? Where's that guy? And then when I realized like, oh, that guy's here now too. That's interesting. And then I started looking back through my life, like when else? And I was like, oh man, I used to race road bikes and mountain bikes. And I remember being on the start line of a race that just started right over there. That was going to be 7 to 10 hours of racing my mountain bike. And I remember on the start line feeling the same. I was like, wow, Mr. Burns is in the group of people at the start line. And then I was like, oh my gosh, my wedding. Oh my gosh, the birth of each of my kids. I was like that same feeling. And I was like, wait, I started looking back through all the pictures and I was like, metaphorically, like Mr. Burns is at all the great parties. Like Mr. Burns is always there when good things happen. Sometimes he's there when things fail and go spectacularly wrong. And that happens, but he's always there. And so I was like, wait, why would I want to get rid of Mr. Burns? And so that's when my mindset shifted from the kind of like bro macho approach to fear, like kick fear in the teeth, no fear.
Yes.
I used to relate to that. Now I don't relate to that. Fear legitimately I can think of a number of occasions where fear has saved, like I have evidence of it saving my life. I'm sure there's a bunch more that I don't have evidence, but it's still, so fear is a good thing.
Yes.
It's just in those environments, it was a little maladaptive. And I heard Liz Gilbert say, fear can come on the trip. It just can't drive. And so then I was like, oh, and then the Mara story. Then I was like, somebody told me this story about the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree teaching, and out behind all the people that were there to listen to the Buddha, there was some commotion in the bushes. And apparently there's a little devil character named Mara. And one of the Buddha's attendants came running up a little panicked and said, hey, master, the Mara's out in the bushes causing trouble. And the Buddha apparently said, oh, good, invite her in for tea. And I remember thinking like, wow, what if I structured my whole life around appropriate exposure to Mr. Burns? Like, what if I built my life around, and now I've learned with appropriate periods of rest between, because I didn't used to realize how important that was. Now I've realized after getting burned out, I've realized like appropriate rest, but so it's not continual. It's just like, but if I go more than a couple of days without having that feeling of like, oh, like, and now I sort of look over my shoulder. I'm like, oh, hey, you're back. Let's go.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? We're about to do something that's so cool. That's so great. Because what I've learned is it's no longer a line in the bush. Like that wiring used to mean run, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I can look over, like, pretending you're using a keyboard. I can look over and just be like, hey, bro, I'm just writing an email. Like, I'm glad you're here. Take a seat on the couch because I always need your advice, but I'm just writing an email. So that's my approach to now. That's my approach to that strain of fear that we sometimes call imposter syndrome.
And I don't know why, because it wasn't really imposter syndrome. It was that the fear part of it, though.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I've always heard people say, the biggest reason why people don't become business owners or follow their dreams or whatever is because of fear. And I always knew that. And it just never hit me the way it did sitting there hearing it related to don't kick fear in the teeth, invite it in. And I can tell you, ever since then, like I said, leading up to me resigning, right after I resigned, I was served with a threatening letter for a lawsuit with a non-compete and the whole thing. And it terrified me. And I just kept thinking, you know what? Every other time I started thinking back about all those times where that feeling was present. Yeah. And more times than not, it was good that came out of it. It was a good thing. And so just reminding myself of that was just.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it is smart to pay attention to, hey, is that actually a lion? Like in the old days, you didn't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
If there was wrestling in the bushes, you better run.
Yeah.
Now you have time to think about it. You can go, hey, okay. And you can play I love the worst case scenario game for just a minute. Just like, what's the worst thing that can, and then you like live in that for a minute and be like, if that happened, I'd deal with it, or wow, if that happened, you know what, maybe I should think about this a little longer. Yeah. But most of the time, especially for creative work, most of the time, that's just wiring that's left over from days gone by.
So will you still get that vulnerable feeling of imposter syndrome? It just, you deal with it quicker and better now?
Yeah, 100%. Every time, this new book, I did over 100 podcast interviews and probably 40 speaking engagements last year. And most of the speaking engagements, I leave tomorrow morning to do an event in DC. Most of the speaking engagements right before, I'm just like, what? But now it's more like, oh yeah, you know what to do here. You know exactly what to do here. Like, oh, I'm glad, that's a good feeling. All right, let's go. Like it's much quicker now. There's occasionally still when I'm maybe a little out of practice, maybe a couple of months between a speaking engagement or something where I'll have to really remind myself. Or it could be even like a new group. Like I spoke a little while ago to a group of people where I was looking out at the audience before. I was sort of peeking around the corner. I was like, these people don't look like they're interested in what I have to say at all. And then I was like, you know what? In the old days, that would have been, I can remember where I was actually in Philadelphia. In the old days, I felt it about 10 minutes in. I was like, in the old days, this would have been a little bit paralyzing. Like and I was like, wow, that's interesting. In my head, there's a game on switch that's going off where like, no, by break these people, I mean, like I can get into here. Like they were very stoic with their arms crossed. And in the old days, I would have been like, this isn't landing. This is terrible, dude. Pull out some old stories, tell a joke. This time I was like, oh, I see. You guys don't think that you're human. Like this is going to be really fun. Like I can make you cry too. Like, so I think you develop a skill to lean into what it means to work with the creative force called fear rather than seeing it as something that's going to kill you,
Yes. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. It meant so much to me. And I know there are people that listen to this that struggle with the imposter syndrome, with fear. And it was literally life-changing for me. So
thank you.
When I had reached out to Jacqueline about you being on the podcast, she told me about the Society of Advice.
Yeah.
And I was immediately fascinated by that and drawn to that. And the reason why is in the financial industry, it feels like a lot of organizations will have groups similar to what the Society of Advice would do, but you have to be part of their captive organization and write all your business towards that RIA or that IMO. And if you're not part of it, you can't be part of the group. So when I found out about the Society of Advice, it was refreshing. So I kind of want to talk about it and promote it a little bit, because from what I understand, it can be anybody can be involved in that and get value from it. You don't have to be part, you just have to be a part of the Society of Advice, but not hooked to any organization. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that's very intentional, because I've noticed what you've noticed, and that there tend to be these little fiefdoms of broadly speaking, we'll just use the word financial advisors that
Yes. Yep.
think that maybe like the way they do it's the only right way, or if you sell a certain product, you're bad, or if you don't use certain terms to describe yourself. And I think some of that stuff's very useful. Like I think there's some truth to some of that stuff, but I think I'm trying to play a slightly different game, which is like, how do we move the whole industry forward? How can we? And I've met some of the kind of financial planners that I would send my mom to are, don't fit those molds.
Yeah.
And they might be swimming upstream, or, doing things differently than the rest of that mold or that stereotype mold. But that's fine. So I was just like, no, what if we just had a place for people who are committed to the craft of planning? And maybe even more importantly, like the craft of connecting with clients. What happened is, people for 20 years, people have been saying, hey, we know how to do training on financial planning. We know how to do training on use of calculators. We know how to do training on investments. We don't know how to talk about what you do. And they would wave their hands like that, like it was some sort of orb in the world. And then they started using words like, we don't know how to talk about people about behavioral finance. I had the global head of financial advice at, I'll just say, one of the 3 largest firms in the world.
Wow.
Say to me one day, we've got the best training in the world. We've got the best budgets in the world. We literally have the best brand in the world. And our people don't know how to talk to humans. It's sort of just meaning like, we don't know how to, and so there's that. That's what we try to do at the Society of Advice, is how can we have we have a monthly workshop. It's 90 minutes where it's recorded for 30 days and then it goes away. So there's no archive. There's no like overwhelming pile of homework to feel like you have to do. It's best if you attend live, and if not, you've got 30 days to watch the recording. But the focus of the conversation is largely like, how do we be better humans so we can be better planners? And even more focused now is like, how do you have meaningful conversations about money? How do you exhibit emotional intelligence? How do you ask great questions? How do you listen carefully? How do you be deeply present for someone? That skill, which I think is not a soft skill, it's a ninja trick. Like not only that, I think it's AI proofing. Like it's not just fun. The only thing that's really going to be left that's massively valuable is your human wisdom. And that human wisdom happens in conversations. Well, how good are you at conversations? Well, that's what we explore at the Society once a month.
Wow. So you're not necessarily teaching people how to sell, you're teaching people how to listen. Is that?
Yeah, that's actually a really great way of phrasing it. Cause I one thing I've said a lot is like, you don't need more overcoming objections training. You need more listening training. Like if you listen, you won't need to overcome objections.
Wow.
Right? Like here, let me give you an example. I mean, Justin, if you go to the doctor and the doctor diagnoses you, and 2 things have to happen. The doctor diagnoses you and you feel thoroughly diagnosed. If those 2 conditions are met, the doctor gives you a prescription. And in the old days, before they were printed, you couldn't even read it.
Yeah.
You would take it to the pharmacy. You wouldn't get a second opinion. You wouldn't Google the medication. You would just take it to the pharmacy, give it to people in white coats that are scary. They would go back behind and mix some things up. You'd sign some waiver that if you grew a 3rd arm, you wouldn't sue anybody. You would get the medicine and you'd take it.
Yeah.
And the reason you did that is because you felt thoroughly diagnosed. If you had a hint of not feeling thoroughly diagnosed, you were getting second opinions and doing all that stuff. So second opinion is a form of an objection, right? Like, so yes. If we take the time to thoroughly diagnose clients, to ask really good questions and listen, our advice can not only be simple, like really simple. It doesn't need to be complicated to prove that we can sell things or that we're really smart or they can't do it on their own. If we ask really good questions, we don't have to quote unquote sell, and we certainly don't have to overcome. I'm a big fan of selling. I love selling.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to. The doctor doesn't sell you anything. The doctor prescribes something. Well, it's not just because they're a doctor. And we're increasingly running into this more and more. You go to the doctor and you don't feel thoroughly diagnosed, and you do go. But if you go to a good doctor, so I think financial advisors are more like that. Like, listen, be thoughtful, ask great questions, repeat back to people, look for, I call them the crunchy bits, like emotional resonance, things that land, places where somebody might make the face, a little bit confused. And then you don't have to overcome objections.
Man, is your audience, the members, a lot of, or mostly or all financial advisors?
I think so. I mean, there might be a couple CPAs, maybe an estate attorney, like anybody who gives financial advice for living is who are members of the Society of Advice.
What's the age range all over the place?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, we have some people still in their undergraduate programs of financial planning, but mostly I would say, gosh, I'm just picturing the last call. There's a couple hundred members and there's 120 or so that attend live, and I don't know, 35 to 55, but there's plenty of people over 70, to be honest. Like, it's just anybody who cares deeply about that craft of communication and connection as it relates to financial advice.
That is so cool. And then once a year, is it once a year that you do a live event, or is it just was last year? I remember seeing that.
Oh, we do a couple of small retreats that we do them here in Park City, Utah. We'll do 3 in the spring and 1 or 2 in the fall. We're actually going to probably in early June, we're going to do our first 3-day, like, really tactical workshop on communication, like where there's facilitated practice and like you want to become a better communicator one-on-one with clients, come for 3 days and we'll teach you how to do it. So that's been the event schedule.
It's interesting. I mean, I came from a background of, you have to get 7 no's. And so overcoming objections. And when I went out on my own to become a financial advisor, I'd gotten my Series 65 and my insurance license. I was scared of presenting and selling because I thought that I would just have to be forceful and get those 7 no's. And that's just not my style. And the idea of diagnosing before prescribing or listening, asking good questions is just so attractive. And that's been my style, but I could certainly learn how to do that better.
Yeah, I think you can't. I mean, I remember similar training, and it's just, I won't use farm language here, but it's garbage. And it works. I mean, it works for people. Like, great. If that works for you, great. But it's like, look, you're walking down the street, somebody walking the opposite direction. As they walk by, they look like they're wearing a white lab coat. Oh, they have a stethoscope around their neck. They slap a prescription on your chest. You walk by, like, you're going to throw it away. And if you say, hey, I don't like this, and they say, oh, you don't like blue? That's okay. I've got green. That's the kind of training we've been giving each other for 7 times. Like, oh, you don't have green? Oh, I got blue. Oh, you don't like blue? I got red. Like, what if you just instead said, oh, hey, I get it. You don't like blue. I must have missed something. Could we back up, Justin? Because I must have missed something. Because here's the belief I have about your audience and everybody else is, if you truly understood what they need, there is no objection. The fact that you are getting an objection is not something to be overcome. It's a signal in your brain that you missed something. So for heaven's sakes, treat this person with some empathy and some, dare I even say, love.
Yeah.
And look across the table and be like, hey, you know what, John? The last couple of times I've suggested we do this particular product. I've suggested we do this. And each time it hasn't really worked for you. It makes me think that I must have missed something. Could we back up? Tell me again, like, what you're trying to do. Here's what I heard. Did I miss something here? Oh, I see. It wasn't that you cared about. It was this. Oh, that would change my suggestion. John, can I have a day or two huddle with my team? I'll put together a different plan for this based on this new information. What else is there that I don't know? Like, what's wrong with that? Instead of just bludgeoning people to death with suggestions until they succumb. I can tell you one thing's a much more fun relationship to have.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like that is like humility and vulnerability to be able to sit down with a client and put the misunderstanding on. You must have misunderstood me. No, I must have missed understood you.
Yeah, I always use the word, I must have miscommunicated
Miscommunicated. Yeah.
instead of like you misunderstood. I think it's called being human.
Yeah.
I think it's called treating people the way you'd like to be treated. Like, I have a need. I'm feeling financial stress in my life. I may even have a very specific reason for it. Like, I don't know how much to save for my kids' education, or I've left my job and I got to roll my 401k, or my wife and I don't have enough insurance and I'm losing sleep. I have a need. I come to you with that need. I want your help. Could you please help me? Well, the reason I'm going to object to your help is if you don't take the time to understand my need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just start chucking stuff at me because that's how you were trained. If instead you just took, it doesn't have to take long, you just took a little, there's all sorts of great research in our industry around why people say no. And it's like 90+% of people surveyed on why they didn't take action when they even paid money. This is around estate plans, but they paid money for the product and they didn't use it. And over 90% of the respondents said it didn't reflect what I wanted. Well, that's such a travesty, because all it would have taken is to say, hey, I think this is what I heard you say. Based on that, I think this is the right direction I should go. Did I get that right? Did I miss anything here? You know what? No, I could see how you would have got that, but actually, no, my wife doesn't like that thing at all, or whatever. Like, it's just called being human, man.
Wow. So I read a similar statistic, and I wonder if it's the exact same statistic, just put in a different way. But the statistic was 7% of people will buy because they were made to understand, and 93% of people will buy because they feel understood.
Yeah, that's great. I have no idea about that study, but that sounds directionally true to me.
It sounds like almost the exact same thing. Asking
Yeah.
questions, understanding, then people buy. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I would go so far, like, people aren't, you actually, in our industry, if you're still getting paid for product, just eke it out as long as you can. That's great. But and it's fine. I don't have any moral objection to it as long as you're
Yeah.
being transparent.
Yeah.
But I would submit to you that the really good financial advisors in the world are no longer getting paid for solutions. They're getting paid for presence.
Wow. Yeah.
And of course the solutions are important. Of course, you got to be a rock star at solutions, but that's not what you're getting paid for. You're getting paid for presence. Nobody cares about your solutions. They care about their problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to your point, it's now more important than ever because of AI and in that whole.
Yeah, I don't think we appreciate what's happening. I think we think it's like a cute version of robo-advice. No, it is unbelievable. And if you understand, this is one of the financial advice is one of the jobs that I think it could make really beautiful. It's not like I'm just a software engineer. If I was a mid-level attorney or a software engineer, I would just be scared to death. As a financial advisor, I can say, oh, it's pointing me. I have more value if I understand my value. If I don't understand my value, I'm going to be out of a job.
Yes. Yes.
But if I understand my value, which is this connection with humans, deep empathy, trust, guidance, navigation, helping somebody align their use of capital with what's important to them, defining what's important to them, like all of that stuff is only getting more valuable. Human connection is now a luxury good,
Yeah.
And so I don't think we understand how fundamentally, like, go talk to anybody in software engineering right now.
Wow.
Go talk to anybody in computer programming. I mean, I have some of my best friends are computer programmers who cannot find jobs, right? So it's no joke. And I think in our industry, it's pointing to something awesome. It's an awesome job.
Yeah.
It's a better job anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd much rather have a nice conversation with you, understand you, and then go scour the world for the right solution to you and bring it back to you on a platter than bludgeon you to death with 7 different ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. We're running out of time for you. But your book, your newest book, I would love for you to promote that, and I'm going to buy a few copies, and we'll do some giveaways when we release the episode. But can you talk a little bit about your latest book?
Yeah. So, this book, it's interesting. I didn't write this book necessarily to sell copies of the book. I wrote this book to generate a bunch of conversations and like this, right? Like and so it's basically every single thing about the book, the design, the form factor, the feel, the way it was written, every word in it, the way the page numbers are written, everything was the number one thing we held in mind the entire time through it all was, will this help generate conversations? So it's really, I don't view it as a book. I view it as a conversation grenade. Sort of toss it in a room and conversations break out. So it's 101 sketches with 101 short essays. You can flip to any page. In fact, we often suggest people like try the 3-minute test. Like literally just flip through it, stick your finger in, open that, read it, shut it, think about it, tell me if you want to go back or not, right? And so that's what it's designed for. So financial advisors are buying it like crazy and handing it out to clients because they're just finding it generating the kind of conversations they want to have.
That is so cool. And what's the name of it again?
It's Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches. So there it is, available wherever you buy books.
That is awesome. Carl, I really, really appreciate your time. Again, thank you for the influence you've had on me and so many other people. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Justin, thank you. It was really fun. Thanks for the wonderful questions.
Yeah, thanks.